The low carbon economy that we're all trying to get to is going to have lots of positive outcomes. But getting there is difficult because we need lots of investment.
We need to mobilize private capital to solve big problems. One of the beauties of blended finance is that it can be catalytic in crowding in that capital.
Private capital historically has flowed to places where the returns that it can obtain are in balance with the risks that it's exposed to. The challenge we have with a lot of renewables development and the technology we need to deliver the lower carbon economy is that the returns can be quite low. We work on blended finance to deliver projects that weren't bankable previously and getting them over the hurdle at which they can be financed by the private sector in pursuit of the Sustainable Development Goals. It's really important to have that over the horizon perspective. If we're to achieve on our climate goals as well as our financial goals, how do you make a project that we know we need to achieve as a society? How do you make that bankable?
Blended finance is an important area for Standard Chartered because many of our markets are disproportionately affected by issues of climate change and inequality. Our clients in our markets are asking us to participate in this space.
Standard Chartered was one of the banks that signed on as part of the Just Energy Transition Partnerships in both Vietnam and Indonesia. What they are aiming to do is move societies to a low carbon economy, but do so in a way that actually takes everybody with them. It's the bank saying, we will be here with you, we will walk with you on this journey to a low carbon economy.
What I'd like to get to is the point where this becomes almost a regular way of doing business, to invite more participation in blended finance structures so that the application can be greater in size and scope.
The private sector is a key enabler in helping the world get to a low carbon economy. Blended finance gives us the opportunity to accelerate our journey to that low carbon future, to bring that future forward.